Happy holidays! Welcome to FRCMedia News. I'm Keith Tebow. Before we begin 2023, we want to use this program to look back at the top Fall River community news stories of 2022. Now, coming up with what's the biggest story of the year this year was difficult, as there are many candidates to choose from. Even though progress was made on the pandemic in 2022, it's still on just about everyone's mind. 2021 saw the advent of vaccines and an easing of restrictions, but 2022 began with what was the largest outbreak of the two-year pandemic as the Omicron variant took hold. Fall River saw cases of up to 300 per day in January. Masks was still mandated in many locations, particularly in local schools. As the winter progressed, new cases decreased, and in February, the State Department of Elementary and Secondary Education lifted the statewide school mask mandate.
School districts no longer need to request a waiver from DESE to remove masks in school buildings. Starting February 28th, they can remove masks regardless of vaccination rates in their buildings. Several schools across the Commonwealth have already lifted mask requirements by attesting that 80% of their students and staff are vaccinated, and they have had success. And we believe that removing the mask requirement will make it easier for students to learn, particularly our young readers and students learning English as a second language. While masking is no longer a statewide requirement, we ask all school leaders and students to make sure they respect all individual choices around mask wearing. Please make sure to create a supportive environment that respects everyone's choice to do what is most appropriate and comfortable for them.
Fall River Public Schools took an extra week to lift its mask mandate, ending the practice on Monday, March 7th.
Our students haven't seen one another. They really have not seen, for extended periods of time, their teachers' faces. I think that in instruction, when articulating, it's important for kids to see one another and to the expressions, et cetera. So I just think that we welcome that change. I think that that's something that was very much needed, and I think that it's time.
As the year went on, new cases dropped and state community testing centers closed as people relied more on home testing. Even though we're in a better place with the pandemic than a year ago, particularly when it comes to serious illness and fatalities, Fall River's COVID statistics for the year still show a relatively high rate of infection. Based on numbers provided by the State Department of Public Health, as of December 22nd, Fall River's total number of COVID cases since the onset of the pandemic is 34,075. 12,900 new cases were reported during this year. Now, just for comparison, in 2021, there were 13,232 new cases. Not much of a difference. Most cases came early in the year during the Omicron outbreak. Focus remains on getting Fall Riverites vaccinated. As of December 22nd, 70% of all eligible residents have been vaccinated with at least one dose. 61% are considered fully vaccinated. Only 30% have received one COVID vaccine booster, and 10% have received the second booster that became available earlier this year. Fall River Department of Health and Human Services Director Tess Curran says even though the elderly remain the age group that is susceptible to getting very sick from COVID, children can also easily get infected, and currently their vaccination rates lag behind other demographics.
Vaccines, particularly amongst this age group, continue to be, the most effective way at preventing infection and keeping, folks out of the hospital and having mild symptoms. This group in general, they're really unable to wear a mask for the most part, socially distance. So it's important that, these little ones are getting the most protection they can, which means getting vaccinated. These vaccines are safe and effective. So what we really need to do is get that information out to parents so that they can make an informed decision and make it easy for them to seek out vaccinations.
So what can we expect from COVID in 2023? Well, we don't know what new variants may crop up, but Ms. Curran's advice from this past summer may still hold true today.
While a lot of folks are over COVID, COVID isn't over with us. It's still really, again, very right now we're seeing that very highly transmissible variant. So I worry about when people do, let their guard down completely. I know it's a challenging 2 years, and we've all been through a lot, and I am also tired of kind of having to think about this all the time. But I think weighing, the benefits and the risks, or really evaluating, if you're going to go see your grandmother, really thinking I should test ahead of time, or I should take some precautions, maybe wear a mask, being just mindful of the population that you're seeing, testing as much as possible, wearing a mask, doing all of those things.
When COVID hit in 2020, not only were we concerned for our health, we also kept an eye on our personal finances. As you may remember, many people were laid off and have since gotten back on their feet. Unemployment in Fall River is well below where it was in 2021. The financial ramifications of COVID on the economy hit this year through rising inflation. Gas prices soared to $5 a gallon over the summer, raising the cost of all goods and services. Many Fall River residents are having a difficult time making ends meet. But inflation seemed to have its biggest impact on the cost of local housing. The city made American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA, money available to Catholic Social Services to provide financial assistance to those having a difficult time paying rent.
What we were seeing during the pandemic was, we had the initial eviction moratoriums that put a hold on freezing people from being evicted. And as those eviction moratoriums were extended, it kind of put a hold on the funds that we were available to spend. So now the eviction moratoriums have expired, and we're kind of like, 2 years into the pandemic, we're seeing the need in the community still with rental arrears, people that have become homeless. They vacated their apartments prematurely during the eviction moratorium because they didn't know that they didn't have to vacate. So what we're trying to do is we have these funds. We want to utilize them within the community. So that's why we're here today. We see and hear these calls come in every day. So this turnout, to me, it's not shocking. There's days that we may receive 10 calls, we may receive 1. So this really isn't shocking to me. I see a few faces in here that I do recognize that they've already called and sought out assistance, and maybe they didn't qualify at the time, and maybe now they do. So for me, my understanding is this is a good turnout. If they're in need, I'm happy that they're here. I'd rather them be here than not come.
A broader housing discussion took place this summer during a community meeting organized by United Interfaith Action of Fall River. City resident Dwayne Dean shared his story of how difficult it's been to meet his basic needs.
For the last 7 years, I paid $550 a month for a one-bedroom apartment. It leaves me with approximately $300. It was always enough. I've never been a day late on my rent. The question I ask myself is, where do I go from here? Rents are astronomical. I don't have first, last, and security. Because, of course, they want that up front. To come up here and speak in front of people I'm going to tell you how hard this is. For one, I am the person that a lot of people that I call friends and family call for help. Now here I am.
The First Baptist Church of Fall River hosted the forum and is one of countless organizations helping residents get by.
When I see these people, summer, spring, fall, winter, so many of them are not only housing insecure, but are homeless. We have expanded so that we have started giving sleeping bags and tents and coats and socks and hand warmers and gloves and tarps to people in Fall River who are homeless. I regularly have people for whom there is no room at the shelter or who do not meet the Fall River ID requirements in order to enter First Step Shelter. Last winter, on the night when it was going to be 6 degrees for the first time. I had a number of homeless folks to whom I gave tents and sleeping bags and the like, who cried because I gave them a tent and a sleeping bag. It breaks my heart that human beings would cry because a sleeping bag and a tent makes the difference between life and death in 6-degree weather.
UIA proposed a series of recommendations to city leaders on how to spend more ARPA dollars to aid those who are housing insecure. Mayor Paul Coogan told those assembled that Fall River already does its fair share in providing funding for affordable housing and rental assistance, but more must be done within our suburbs.
In Fall River, approximately 27% of all of our housing is affordable or has something attached to it. If you look at our neighboring communities, which are all supposed to be at a minimum of 10%, you look at Westport, 4.5%. You look at Somerset, 3.7, Swansea, 3.9, Freetown, 2.6. The state law that guides our communities to go to a 10% threshold was chosen by the legislator and our housing specialists so that everybody took responsibility for some of their neighbors. That's how the law was written. Everybody's supposed to be at 10% so that the community, Bristol County, Massachusetts, raises all the boats together. But these other towns have chosen to go a different path. So my answer to Reverend Hornsby and the UIA is go to those towns, advocate for inclusionary zoning, get them to change their regulations so that they pick up some of this housing.
Organizations such as Citizens for Citizens was expected to see an increase in the number of applicants for its fuel assistance program this winter as the cost of electricity and natural gas are at record levels. This spring, the city helped small businesses recoup some of their revenue lost during COVID by providing grants funded by ARPA money.
When you have your community that really supports you, the small businesses, the small practices, the mom and pop shops, the bakeries, you feel a state of security. You feel that we're in it together, and there's no other feeling like that. When if I was to rewind what my thoughts were during those 3 months, it was a very unsure, and all my colleagues had that same mindset, all my co-workers. We didn't know, but not only does it set a precedence that your community is behind you, God forbid anything would ever happen in the future or any other event, you have a resource. You know that people behind you.
Gasoline prices are now a tad below what they were to end 2021, but economists are leery that the high inflation may result in a recession in 2023. 2022 began with the inauguration of Fall River's city government. Mayor Paul Coogan took the oath of office for his second term.
Today, as we look forward to the next 2 years, I'm excited to see what we can accomplish. Together, we did remarkable things despite the roadblocks we faced. Looking forward, I have nothing but faith in what we can do if we continue to collaborate and pursue a unified vision for Fall River. Fall River has a bright future. And as we embark on my next term with new counselors, new school committee members, I am filled with the same hope and energy that I had in January of 2020. And I will leave you with the same words I did in my last inauguration speech because they ring true even today. If we are able to take on our problems together, we will be able to succeed together. I hope all of you will join me in our goal to make Fall River a rising star in Massachusetts, a place we are all proud to call home. Because together, nothing can stop us from moving Fall River forward. Thank you, and may God bless all of you and guide us through this journey.
History was made on the Fall River City Council as for the first time, the panel selected 2 women, Pam LaLiberte and Michelle Dion, to serve as president and vice president.
So to have more females, more strong females on both the council and the school committee, it's a big deal. And it's a big deal for, younger kids that are looking up, thinking that this is something they might want to do, or other women who are thinking, oh my God, I would never want to put myself through that. Like, oh wait, they can do it. They have all different jobs. Some of them have kids, some of them don't. Some of them are retired, some of them are younger. So there's a big variety to choose from if it's something you think you might align with one of them, and maybe it's something that you want to do.
The City Council welcomed one newcomer, Andrew Raposo, while longtime Councilor Joe Camara returned after a one-term hiatus. Bobby Bailey, Shelley Pereira, and Sarah Rodrigues are the new faces on the school committee. As summer approached, incumbent City Councilor Trot Lee resigned for personal reasons. His seat was filled by 2021 election 11th place finisher Laura Washington.
I'm so excited for this opportunity. This is why I ran. This is what I wanted. I think I can, offer a lot to my city. But I'm coming in at a very busy time, budget season. So my first obligation is to I don't like to be not prepared. To get prepared and read up on the budgets and, what's going on. Relationships are everything. So capitalizing on, the knowledge that people already have, talking to counselors, talking to the administration, talking to the department heads, just getting as much knowledge as I possibly can, talking to former city councilors who know. Communication is key. You can't do anything in a silo. I have a lot ahead of me, a lot to learn in that budget, so I will take as much knowledge from anybody.
That was not the only change the City Council would experience this year. In late summer, Council President LaLiberte was charged with harassment toward the wife of a former lover in Westport and witness intimidation in lying to police. Councilor LaLiberte did not resign her council seat, but did step down as council president in early September.
I think that everybody has been very professional. I think, I agree, it was courageous on her part. She's putting the city first. She's taking care of her personal business. There should be no reflection on her whatsoever. She will still be here on the council. She'll still be able to contribute. And I think we've been able to stay on track, to keep doing our city business, which is the most important thing at this time.
Yeah, well, I think it's the right thing to do. I think, it's an unfortunate, the entire situation is unfortunate. It puts a bad spot for her. I feel bad for her and her family, and I also feel bad for everyone else that's involved. But I think the right thing to do is step down. There's just no doubt about it.
It's an unfortunate set of circumstances for everybody involved. I think she clearly seen that it might potentially lead to a distraction, and the fact that she's taken the leadership, as we elected her to be, in a leadership position. She's taken the leadership role to truly kind of identify the fact that it could potentially be perceived as a distraction or become a distraction for the council. So the fact that she's actually taken it upon herself to kind of remove herself from that position and actually remove her colleagues from having to make a decision whether or not they perceived it to be a distraction, I think should be acknowledged and applauded for. But I wish her the best in her personal issues that she's going through.
Councilor Joseph Camara was elected to serve as council president for the remainder of the year. Now, in terms of her court case, Councilor LaLiberte's lawyer, Frank Camara, claims his client was the victim of prejudice based on her standing within the community.
The Westport police were overreaching from the beginning on this case. This is a love triangle case, and the resources spent and the manpower and the time exerted for this case, it appears to me that there must be no other crime in Westport. That's what it appears to me. If the parties weren't who they are, and if Ms. LaLiberte didn't have the public position that she should or that she has, this would never have gone this far. The Westport Police Department would have probably spent about an hour figuring it out and summons the person in on an annoying phone calls charge at best. But apparently Westport Police, again, has nothing better to do, so they chose this course of action.
Attorney Camara asked for the intimidation charges to be dropped, a motion denied by District Court Judge Sabina Coyne earlier this month. FRCMedia legal analyst Steve Sabra of Sabra Law says the ruling was appropriate, as Councilor LaLiberte has yet to be arraigned on her alleged crimes.
Basically, what Judge Coyne said was that it's premature, and it's premature because the case isn't even before the court yet. If you haven't been arraigned, the case isn't before the sort of the judicial branch of the government. So it's not a decision on the merits, meaning that it's not a decision where Judge Coyne is saying that, yeah, the motion ought to be allowed or it ought to be denied. All she's saying is that I don't have authority to dismiss the case because it's really not even a case before me yet.
Consular La Liberté is due back in court on January 12th. It looks like we've gotten to the end of the federal corruption case of former Fall River Mayor Jazel Correa. Convicted in 2021, the former mayor reported to a federal prison in April in New Hampshire to begin serving a 6-year sentence. The appeal of his convictions of fraud related to his Snow Owl app business and extortion of local marijuana retailers was heard in September by a 3-judge panel in the First Circuit Court of Appeals and rejected in late November.
It was a very thorough decision by the appellate panel. As you may have mentioned, it was 82 pages long. They addressed every issue. They summarized the facts first, and then they dealt with what the law is in the issues that are raised, and then they applied the law to the facts, and they kind of went through it to start with regard to, for example, the sufficiency of the evidence, because that was one of the arguments that the defense made. It's not so much that they would have come up with a different decision or another jury would have come up with a different decision. It's only that was the decision, was the evidence sufficient? And you take all the inferences in favor at this point of the government to justify the convictions and beyond a reasonable doubt, and that's what they did.
The only avenue left for appeal for the former mayor is to the U.S. Supreme Court, which, if approached, would likely not hear the case. The cases of the remaining co-defendants also came to an end this year. Former Correa Chief of Staff Genevieve Andrade pled guilty to making false statements and was ordered to serve 12 months of home confinement and pay a $50,000 fine. David Hebert was sentenced for his role in the case with 3 years of probation and $86,000 in fines and forfeitures. We will continue our look back at the top community news stories in 2022 right after this.
Hi, I'm Tess Curran, Director of Health and Human Services for the City of Fall River. I know that we're all tired of COVID-19. However, COVID remains a threat in our community. Anybody can become infected with COVID-19, especially children. Therefore, it's critical that parents consider getting their children vaccinated.
We realize that children already get a lot of vaccines as it is when they're young. So to add one more can be a lot for parents. But just like the other vaccines have basically helped eliminate many of the diseases that they were designed to fight, same thing with COVID.
As a parent, when we were thinking about how to approach the vaccination process with them, we were really looking at what the benefits were versus what the risks were. You know, they're 3 active kids. They like to play outside, they like to run around, and we wanted to keep them as healthy as possible. We talked to our pediatrician, what was going to be the best move for all 3 of them.
For parents who have questions about the vaccine, the best thing you can do is ask your pediatrician.
There was a little pinch, but it wasn't really that bad.
Anyone 6 months and older is eligible to receive the COVID-19 vaccine. For questions, please contact your doctor or visit frvax.com for additional information.
Welcome back to this special edition of FRC Media News, looking back at the top local community news stories of 2022. We turn our focus now to local schools. The communities of Fall River, Somerset, Swansea, and Westport all voted to support funding the construction of a new Diamond Regional Vocational Technical High School.
It's a fantastic feeling knowing that the 10 years that we have been working with the MSBA on our information that was sent out, the community support, the understanding that what we do on a regular basis here at Diamond Regional, Greater Fall River Vocational, is a concrete situation for us. It's definitely a scenario that we would expect, knowing what our kids do, what our graduates do, what our instructors do for their community of Greater Fall River and the region. It's just a fantastic feeling knowing that all 4 communities appreciate the hard work that goes into everything that's done here at this institution and how it benefits the communities moving forward. It's a phenomenal feeling.
In Fall River, Mayor Paul Coogan, who supports the school, wanted to put the issue of funding a new diamond before city voters in the form of a debt exclusion, similar to what was done to fund the new BMC Durfee High School in 2018.
The cost, 30 years at $6.5 million is around a little over $200 million. That's such a significant bill. I know they just went through this in Taunton with Bristol Plymouth. Most places will go to the voters on a project of this size, and I think that's what we should do in Fall River. We did it with Durfee. We went out, we did the work, we got the votes necessary to pass it, and I think Diamond would find a similar result, but I do not think that putting either that kind of reductions in city government or that kind of a bill on a tax bill, that kind of amount on a tax bill should go to the voters. That's my opinion. They should be able to weigh in on this, and not myself and 4 or 5 other people up here making a decision that has that kind of impact.
The city council did not approve the special election, so for now, the city will need to come up with approximately $6.5 million a year to pay for the city's portion of constructing the new school. Also at Diamond this year, Superintendent Director Elvio Ferreira resigned after 3 years on the job and was replaced on an interim basis by former retired principal Brian Bentley.
When I'm in front of the students, there's a whole different energy. I always felt that I have fed that off the students' energy and just working with them and connecting with them. I still get asked the familiar questions such as, my mom remembers you or my dad remembers you. And I got one of those this morning. It was kind of funny. She says, my mom, and I said, just don't even have to go down that road. On August 31st, it's going to be the whole school population will be back with the students. Again, that energy that they bring to a new school year, bring to just their life and their enthusiasm, their energy of being in the building collectively. I will be probably a familiar face in the hallways, only because that's where I feel that I belong with them, finding out what I always call the temperature of the building, what's going on. And that's difficult to do, for me anyway, it's difficult to do from an office setting. I need to be out there.
Nearly a year after opening to students, the new Durfee High School hosted its formal dedication.
Not that long ago, this was only a dream that we decided to work hard on for a few years after I retired as the first vice principal from Durfee. We campaigned hard, we canvassed, we held signs, we made phone calls, you name it. We all felt a tremendous sense of accomplishment when the voters saw what we saw and they agreed with us that Fall River needed a new Durfee High School. And if there is only one thing I learned in my 3 decades spent at Durfee, it is that Durfee is much more than a building. It is much, much bigger than that. Durfee is resiliency, like the students who defy all the odds to meet their potential. Durfee is a community, like the way I saw students and faculty come together whenever we were faced with a tragedy. Durfee is pride, whether it's the crowd cheering on our legendary sports teams or the alumni who went on to show the world just how great the city of Fall River is.
The Fall River School Committee this past year took the interim tag off Superintendent Maria Ponce and rewarded her with a 4-year contract.
I'm humbled, and I'm thankful to the community, the school committee, for their confidence in me. I mean, I've been in the work, I've been doing the job. Certainly, I think that the title might change, but the work continues. There's still a lot of work to be done. The priority is to continue to stabilize this district. We have so much to be proud of in our district, and I think that we need to highlight and showcase all the good that's going on in our district. We need to reculture ourselves, to create a district that's inclusive of everyone and is really a high, really high, holds itself to the highest standards.
The district did see progress for 4 of the students, but learning loss from the pandemic remains. In the fall, the district reported lower MCAS scores than those taken prior to the pandemic. Superintendent Ponce says while MCAS is important, it's not the focus for educators.
We're not teaching to the test, but we're teaching kids on how to take that test and how to embrace, if the multiple choice piece, the open response, now they're comparing text, et cetera. We're teaching kids how to approach and provide them with test-taking skills that they can apply, whether it's MCAS, whether it's any test at all. It's just good skills for our kids to have. But that's one indicator, and that's what I keep saying. That's one indicator. I know it's the indicator we get judged on and labeled, but that is one indicator, and really that indicator should validate all the work that we do, because it should support all the other indicators that we're looking at. So I want to make sure that, yes, it's an important indicator, but we have a whole bunch of other indicators that we're looking at.
This past year, Fall River welcomed a new chief. Paul Govin comes in at a time of uncertainty within the department, following a series of cases of officer misconduct. The new chief is looking to build back community trust.
As we all know, the past few years, the Fall River Police Department has seen its share of challenges. But I didn't take this position to dwell on the past. I firmly believe that you can't get to where you want to go to by looking in the rearview mirror. I grew up in this city. I'm a lifelong resident. I grew up in the South End, and I always knew that I wanted to be a police officer. I take on this position at an interesting time for this department. It's quite possibly the youngest we have ever been. But I believe if you treat these new officers fairly, train them properly, indoctrinate them into a healthy, hardworking culture, then it's conceivable that we will have one of the best police departments in the foreseeable future. Moving forward, there are still some matters from the past that need to be dealt with. Despite inheriting some unresolved issues, I am determined to prove to this community that this department is certainly something to be proud of.
Greater Fall River played host to President Joe Biden in July when he visited the former Brayton Point power plant site in Somerset, soon to be the home of a key component in the implementation of offshore wind.
5 years ago, this towering power plant that once stood with cooling towers 500 feet high closed down. The coal plant at Brayton Point was the largest of its kind in New England. 1,500 megawatts of power, enough to power 1 in 5 Massachusetts homes and businesses. For over 50 years, this plant supported this region's economy through the electricity they supplied, the good jobs they provided, and the local taxes they paid. But the plant, like many others around the country, had another legacy, one of toxins, smog, greenhouse gas emissions, the kind of pollution that contributed to the climate emergency we now face today. Today, Brayton is one of the frontiers, on the frontier of clean energy in America. On this site, they'll manufacture 248 miles of high-tech, heavy-duty cables. Those specialized subsea cables are necessary to tie offshore wind farms to the existing grid. Manufacturing these cables will mean good-paying jobs for 250 workers, as many workers as the old power plant had at its peak. And the port.
Development on the Somerset side of the Taunton River will soon become a complement to what's happening here on the Fall River side. The city this fall finally put the finishing touches to the Senator Tom Norton City Pier, which will become an outdoor waterfront showplace.
The dedication of this pier represents another tremendous step forward for Fall River and our waterfront. I want to thank the Redevelopment Authority for their vision and hard work, which made this city pier a reality going back decades. Since becoming mayor, I have asked many times about the plans and timelines for this piece of land. This area is one of the most popular in Fall River right now. It's used every day by walkers, boaters, commuters. It's an honor to provide our residents with another beautiful open space that can be enjoyed for decades to come. The future of this pier is very bright. In my head, I can already picture concerts, food truck nights, workout classes, maybe a beer garden, and the opportunities are endless. And we've seen a new appetite for civic events in our city, and today we acknowledge another great place to host them.
People in this audience, whether you held an office or you didn't hold an office, have been goodwill. You've spread your goodwill out to a lot of people. And that's what's appreciated about people who are Fall Riverites. And that's what I carried with me every day. It's all about people. I thank you for yesterday. I thank you for today. And I thank you for tomorrow. God bless you. Let's make the waterfront a tourist attraction to beat none.
Just last week, the reconstruction of Route 79 symbolically began with a groundbreaking ceremony, putting an end to a 20-year plan to tie Fall River with its waterfront.
Back in 1999, the Fall River Office of Economic Development commissioned a report called the Harbor Economic Development. This report did not sit on a shelf in spite of what many people think happens to these reports. That plan and subsequent revisions to that plan served as the guiding light for the revitalization of Fall River's greatest asset, our waterfront. Recommendations in those plans consisted of extension of the boardwalk from Heritage Park to the Veterans Memorial Park, check. Streetscape improvements along Duval Street, check. Reestablishment of commuter rail to Boston, check. Elimination of the spaghetti ramps, check. And now the raising of Route 79 and the creation of new waterfront boulevard and development of 19 acres to create new housing and niche retail.
You look from Memorial Park, you know, you've worked so hard for the Vietnam Memorial and all the other beautiful memorials there, and how much you embrace our veterans. And then the walk all along this corridor through City Pier. And then you see the city on a hill, and no longer will it feel so far away from this beautiful waterfront, that there will be a real opportunity to access the waterfront to your city on the hill and your city to the waterfront. So this is truly transformational to bring Route 79 and Duval, connected from the city down, but also along the whole waterfront, right to Battleship Cove and to the bridge.
And of course, Fall River residents saw for themselves what the MBTA station will look like as construction of the depot is complete, with commuter rail service to begin late next year. Earlier this month, Governor Charlie Baker and state officials cut the ribbon on the new Freetown station.
I remember in 1990 when then Governor Wells stood on the steps of Fall River Government Center, right, Mayor Lambert, and promised us, if I don't deliver commuter rail to the South Coast, you can sue me. And then I have a famous, or maybe I should say infamous, groundbreaking shovel that's in my State House office, given to me by then Governor Paul Cellucci, that says groundbreaking Fall River New Bedford commuter rail line, October 1998. Then I have the real groundbreaking shovel given to me by Governor Baker in July of 2019. And while there have been 6 governors that have promised me and promised us that we'd have commuter rail to Fall River and New Bedford, it was Governor Baker, Lieutenant Governor Polito that actually delivered on those promises. And I shall always be grateful, and I will never let people forget that it was through their hard work, through their commitment, that we are experiencing what we're experiencing today, finally getting 21st century public transportation to and from our capital city, from these 2 great South Coast cities.
I see a lot of folks I've had conversations with this project about for a very long time that were incredibly helpful and informative in terms of getting to the point where we could figure out a plan that we could both execute on and pay for in a reasonable period of time to get service to the only 2 major municipalities within 50 miles of Boston that didn't have it. And I think in some respects that's the most fundamental issue of all, which is how are we going to claim to be an inclusive Commonwealth if the South Coast of Massachusetts, and Fall River and New Bedford in particular, did not have access to the public transportation that was available, as I said before, to all the other communities within 50 miles of Boston of any significant size. I am really looking forward to being able to come back here as a private citizen at some point in 2023 and be able to hop on that train and see the fulfillment of what I know for many of you has been 3 and 4 decades worth of advocacy. Congratulations.
Fall River's future as an MBTA station was one of the initiatives before voters in this year's state election. City residents needed to approve becoming members of the MBTA before service could commence next year. The debate focused on what the new station would cost taxpayers and whether that investment would translate into a better quality of life. During a community meeting prior to the election, MBTA leadership informed the community that Fall River would not be paying more for public transportation than it already does.
In Fall River, the assessment that we've calculated as a pro forma calculation would be about $600,000 of fee to be in the MBTA service area. But how much does Fall River pay to SERTA, to the Regional Transportation Authority? $1,500,000. That more than offsets the $600,000 and leaves you with a cushion of nearly $1 million. So there is no net amount of money that Fall River will have to pay to the MBTA by voting to become part of the service area. That's a fact.
Those opposed to joining the MBTA challenged those numbers and warned that the commuter rail service will result in an increase in the local market rate housing stock, raising rents across the city.
The MBTA will not bring in affordable housing because not too long ago on August 10th, the new guidelines came in and it said that, once these developers get their building permits, they can move forward without any need for a special permit, variance, zoning amendment, waiver, or other discretionary approvals. This removes local control. I'm not against anyone making money. I'm just against developers making money off of the backs of the taxpayers. Because at the same time, as they go on with this, the taxpayers of Fall River are going to be paying this debt every single year that's going up.
Right.
That is a very serious red flag for me as a constituent. And it's just, and for our state delegation to pass this,
right,
to move forward after they get the building permits, I mean, it's just, granted all these waivers, that's not fair.
Ultimately, residents overwhelmingly voted in favor of the project.
People were just very, very supportive. I didn't for the life of me know why there was a cadre of people who thought that was a negative for the city of Fall River. And even looking at it this morning after, when you see the results like that, I guess most people thought like I did. But at the same time, I just still to this day don't know why people would not want the train. I went to the meetings, I listened, but if you listen to some of these people, they're from somewhere else. I have no idea what they're thinking, and it was win-win for the city of Fall River and the South Coast, and I'm very, very pleased with the results.
In terms of the rest of the election, Fall River by and large followed the lead of the rest of the Commonwealth, voting for Democrats for all executive branch offices, topped by the election of Maura Healey as the state's next governor.
Tonight, I want to say something to every little girl and every young LGBTQ person out there. I hope tonight shows you that you can be whoever you want to be. I stand before you tonight proud to be the first woman and the first gay person ever elected governor of Massachusetts. The people of Massachusetts tonight have given us a historic opportunity and a mandate to act. So we're going to ignore the noise. We're going to focus every day on making a positive difference in people's lives.
Locally, the city's 3 state representatives, Carol Fiola in the 6th Bristol District, Alan Sylvia in the 7th, Paul Schmidt in the 8th, and State Senator Mike Rodrigues were all re-elected. The only new face locally come January will be the seating of Democratic Attleboro Mayor Paul Heroux as Bristol County Sheriff, defeating longtime incumbent Republican Sheriff Tom Hodgson.
It was time for change. Just like 5 years ago when I knocked off the second longest serving mayor of Attleboro, it was a similar situation. It was time for change. People were ready. And that's why 5 years ago I committed to doing no more than 3 terms. I said I was going to do 2, maybe 3 terms, and now I'm in my 3rd and final term, but that's why with Sheriff I've also committed to doing no more than 2 terms because it's a 6-year term. First thing I have to do is establish the standards with the staff, what my expectations are, and they really should go without being said. The first most important thing is honesty. I said this to my current staff of employees 5 years ago when I took over as mayor, but it was first we have to be honest with each other, because if we're not honest with each other, we're worthless. Then it's basically working towards implementing the things that I campaigned on, making sure we measure recidivism, measure our program's effect on recidivism, really doing discharge planning, looking at housing, healthcare, and a job, working with outside organizations, looking at the correctional officers and their work conditions as well, making sure they have the proper training or adequate training or enough training. So a lot of things.
The war between Russia and Ukraine is a half a world away, but its impact is being felt here in Fall River. In early May, 2 local churches sponsored a solidarity walk for Ukraine that started at Blessed Trinity Church on Plymouth Avenue and ended at St. John the Baptist Ukrainian Catholic Church on Center Street.
As a Catholic priest and as a citizen of Ukraine and America, whose family in Ukraine, every morning before I wake up, I check my mom is alive, my sister and brother-in-law, my nieces, and everyone is okay. So, God forgive me, but I will say this. If we will not kill Putin, he will kill us. Some politician says, it is not Russian war. This is Putin's war. But that army who came from the moon, 90% of Russians follow what Putin says. So we need to be very realistic who they are, what they want. They want to destroy us. They want to kill all of us. And after us, they will go to the Europe, and he says they would like to come even here.
Don't get tired of this war. Do not have fatigue. I beg you to share information at work, on social media, with your families. I beg you to join us to help fight this unjust war on innocent people. I beg you to fight for freedom and democracy, because that's how you have it, because someone fought for it.
Over the summer, a history teacher at Diamond sponsored Ukrainian student Oleg Lisi to come to America and speak with students about his experiences with the war. Oleg was away at school when the war first broke out and has not returned. The fate of his family, unknown.
I went into my Instagram. Normally I don't have many notifications there, but then I look at my director and there was 9 message plus. And everyone, what is going on in Ukraine? And through all these messages, I saw only one: Russia invades Ukraine. My friend asked, Russia invades Ukraine. And then in this second, I started calling my mom. I was afraid she'd not pick up, because you know how it's you have panic attack, everything. I was just really hard to talk about it, but I was calling her, and she's like, I remember only one thing she told me: Oleg, it starts. The war starts, real starts. Actually, I really like Ukraine. Okay, it's not super comfortable country to live. It's not super rich, but I don't think I will ever back there, because 18% of my city is destroyed. 80%, that's a really huge city. It's like Fall River. Irpin is really huge. There's a lot of parks, hospitals. It's really nice. It was one of prettiest Ukrainian cities, with European standard, with everything. But then they just came there and destroyed everything. I'm the same person as you, and we are all people. We have different passports, different values, different everything, but we are the same. And when I see that my Ukrainians, my nationality dies because someone decided to kill them just because they are Ukrainian, as me, with the same Ukrainian passport, the same another language, because they just won't be different. In 2022, it's ridiculous.
When 48 migrants were shipped to Martha's Vineyard by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis in late summer, Catholic Social Services in Fall River was on the ground providing support.
Because Martha's Vineyard and the Cape is in the catchment area of the Diocese of Fall River, that's why we were involved. And so we were there and provided clothing, because when they came, they just were wearing shorts and t-shirts and attire from Martha's Vineyard. One of the 2-year-olds had a giant stuffed shark. So we provided sweatpants and underwear and some toiletries and some cell phones. And I had one of our immigration attorneys come, and we had 2 staff who speak Spanish. And some of the MEMA staff who were doing the initial intakes did not speak Spanish. So one of my staff sat with MEMA to intake every one of those people and was able to translate.
David Allman, the Fall River autistic teen who died of neglect in 2020 at the hands of his father and his girlfriend, and was the subject of an investigation critical of the state's welfare system and Fall River Public Schools, was memorialized this fall with the dedication in his name of the Grove at Heritage State Park, an initiative spearheaded by local resident Michael Almeida.
David, I didn't know you, but it feels like I've known you your entire life. We don't have the answers why the Lord called you home so young. We wish it was just a dream. We are all wishing you would walk back into our lives, but on Wednesday, October 21st, 2020, the Lord called you home as one of his beautiful young angels. Your love and life lives on inside all of us, and we will hold on tight. It's not my place to question why, only God knows why. God needed another angel, and he saw you were in pain and suffering, so he called you home. David, I leave you with this, with a beautiful tree planted in your memory, and a bench overlooking the beautiful scenery, and boats in the water. You would love this. I hope the angels know what they have gained. Please watch over your brothers Michael, Joshua, and Grayson, and help guide them through life. They're going to need you.
And he will have an impact on our court system in the way that we work together forever. I mean, the one thing that's come from this that's really important is we have the Department of Children and Families, we have the schools, we have the probation service, we have the court system, and we now work much better together. We share information better. We're looking out for those signs that would indicate there's another problem similar to this. So, for those things, I thank David Almond.
And finally, what a way to celebrate your 102nd birthday. 3rd grade students at the Atlantis Charter School helped fulfill the wish of World War II veteran Joe Bucko.
I was touched because he's 102 years old and all he wants was cards for his birthday. And instantly I thought to myself, well, I know where I can get him 22 from my classroom. So then I reached out to my team and I said, would you guys be interested in making cards for Mr. Bucko as well? And of course, they're an amazing group of teachers and they said yes. So we all joined in, but then Miss Luciano, the 3rd grade teacher, she says, I think that's the great-grandfather of one of my students. So I thought, well, how perfect that there's a connection between Mr. Bucko and the Atlantis Charter School community.
Fabulous. I can't get over it. It's really, really nice. It means you saw a lot of stuff. Yeah. A lot of things like hardly any cars or anything. You used to go down the street, if there was 2 cars parked, you say, wow, rich people live here. Now, if you can find 2 parking spaces, you're lucky.
However, the festive nature of the birthday celebration became a bit tempered 1 month later when Mr. Bucko passed away. May he rest in peace. We will wrap up this special edition of FRC Media News right after this.
Hi, I'm Tess Curran, the Director of Health and Human Services for the City of Fall River. COVID continues to circulate in the community, and we need to be aware of the resources available to us. These resources include testing, treatments, and vaccinations.
As we enter into the flu season, the winter season, the biggest advice I can give to all
people of our community is to monitor themselves for symptoms, and home tests for COVID are available, and I encourage people to do those tests to isolate if they have symptoms or if they test positive to COVID, and then to really reach out to their medical provider if they do test positive on one of the home tests. There are treatments available now for COVID. Many of them are very effective in preventing hospitalization and severity of symptoms. The manufacturers of the COVID vaccines have updated their vaccines to meet the new variants that we see in our community, including Omicron. And so I encourage people to get the booster vaccine. For individuals who have questions about COVID or the new vaccines that are coming out, I recommend that they reach out to their medical provider, or they can look at the local resources on the frvax.com website.
That's all for this special edition of FRC Media News, looking back at the top community news stories of 2022. Please visit our website at frmedia.org for all the latest news and local information. FRC Media News airs Thursdays at 6 p.m. and Fridays at 5:30 p.m. For all of us here at FRC Media News, I'm Keith Tebow. Here's to a happy and healthy new year, and we'll see you next week.